Hi, friends. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Ssemanda, the intuitive psychiatrist, and you're listening to Stepping into Soul Power. Friends, we are in for a treat today. Our guest is a truly remarkable woman. She is a doctor of naturopathic medicine, author, internationally recognized psychic medium, medical intuitive, ancestral healer. Her podcast ranks in the top 5. Not only that, but she is an award-winning author, and others have described her as an oracle with just an exceptional gift that bridges the mystic, the prophetic, and the realms of seers. And her work empowers other individuals to tap into their full potential and just create this deeper connection with themselves and with the world around them. I am absolutely honored to welcome Dr. Lotte Valentin to the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. My honor.
Yes. So, Dr. Lotte, thank you so much for being here. I know our listeners are eager to hear your incredible story. And let's start with that. Let's start by diving into your personal journey. If you could share how you came on this path to empower others in such a unique way.
Yes. I have kind of a unique story. So I had 2 near-death out-of-body experiences. So a near-death experience is typically you leave your body and you go somewhere else, not that you almost got run over when you crossed the street, which some people think. And the first one happened after my 3rd child was born, and I actually gave birth in between 2 earthquakes, a 7.4 and a 7.2 earthquake. And I'm going to tell that story shortly because it's important to understand the concept of the near-death experience itself. So I was lying on the birthing table in the hospital and contracting about 3 minutes apart. And all of a sudden we had a 7.4 earthquake. And the hospital was built on rollers, and there wasn't that much damage during this earthquake because it was centered in the desert. And it was in 1992. But this hospital was at the border of Anaheim in California, bordering the desert. So literally probably one of the first buildings. So we were really close to the epicenter, and it started shaking. And you know how they have all those little metal instruments on the metal trays in the hospitals? They were levitating up and down on the trays, clanging. And the midwives, the nurses, my husband, everybody was just leaning over me to hold me down on the table, or I would have levitated off. And I remember thinking, I never thought I was going to die this way, because as at any moment, these windows are going to come crashing down, or the ceiling tiles are going to, fall in and bury us in rubble. We lost all the power in the hospital, and you could hear the generators kick in, and we had the light of like a night light in the unit, because it was, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And my labor actually stopped for a moment, because when you are giving birth and the tiger is about to eat you, right, you're going to stop giving birth and get yourself to safety. So it was that bad of a shock. So the earthquake passed, and then I gave birth, and then we had the second shock, the 7.2 earthquake, and then I finally got to hold my daughter. And they put the daughter in my arms, and all of a sudden I had this excruciating pain. So I'm arching backwards, and I'm just yelling to my husband, take the baby, because I couldn't even hold her. And that was the first time I hemorrhaged. So I hemorrhaged, lots and lots of blood clots, and they kept me in the hospital an extra day. And they put me on IV drip to contract the uterus. And then they said, okay, well, it looks like it's okay now, and we're going to send you on your way. Like the bleeding has slowed way down. Well, about 10 days later, I hemorrhaged a really, really large blood clot, like bigger than a man's large fist. And we went to the ER. They did a manual inspection, and they said, well, everything looks good. It was probably a second lining that came out, and they sent me on my way. Then the next evening, the same thing happens at home. Another huge blood clot comes out. We call the hospital, and it's about 9:30 at night. And I'm yelling to my husband, I am not going back, because the bleeding is stopping. The big one clot came out, and they're not going to do anything because they didn't do anything yesterday. So it was decided I should just stay at home overnight and see the doctor in Huntington Beach, California, where we lived at the time. And so the next morning I go to the doctor, same thing, manual inspection, no lab work, no ultrasound, nothing. And again, he said, well, could have been another lining that came out. I mean, at this point, I'm thinking, how many linings can you have, right? I'm in my early 30s. I'm 30. I just turned 34. And I'm the picture of health. I had just studied nutrition back then, which was, you couldn't even study it at the college yet. So it was a really new thing to study. So I was really healthy. I was eating, well, and the picture of health otherwise. So he sends me on my way. And then that afternoon, I hemorrhage again. So at this point, we say, well, we have to go back to the ER. Obviously, something is wrong. And I had a lot of pain if I was standing up. I couldn't stand up and hold the baby because all of a sudden I would just have radiating pain down my thighs. And it literally felt like somebody put a bowling ball in my stomach. And there was so much pressure going down and pushing down. So we go back to the ER, and what happens? Again, another manual inspection. The doctor comes in, they look, they say, well, there isn't that much bleeding going on right now. So there I am. I'm lying on the table. They close the door. I don't even have a bell to ring. I'm just lying on this, table in the ER. And all of a sudden, I start bleeding again. So I'm thinking, at least I'm bleeding again. I'm in the ER. Now they're going to figure out something is wrong. Didn't think much of it, right? And this is the divine interference, because this nurse came to check on me at this particular moment. I mean, had she been checking on me 3 minutes later, I might not be here today, because it was such divine timing. Wow. And she opened the door, and I just see her jaw, like on the floor, just staring at me, going, gasping, and like, and I can hear the call on the loudspeaker, OBGYN, stat to the ER, OBGYN, stat to the ER. And she quickly cleans up the papers, which has all blood on it. And within, 30 seconds, this middle-aged physician comes running into my room at full speed. He probably ran through the hospital. And he said, how much have you been bleeding? And I quickly told him it started Wednesday. I bled Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and now again. So I've hemorrhaged 4 times in 3 days. And he said, all right, let's take a look. And him and the younger physician, which was probably a resident physician, take a look. And as they are examining me, another large blood clot comes out. So this is the 5th one now in 3 days. And at this point, I try to sit up and tell him that I'm not feeling too good. But he knows how much I've been bleeding, and he knows I'm going to go into shock now. So he just pushes me down on the table. They start tipping it backwards. My head goes towards the floor. My feet goes towards the ceiling. And at this point, I can't even keep my eyes open. So I just hear the room filling with staff. And I have a nurse on my left that's trying to get an IV placed. And I have a nurse on my right with a blood pressure cuff, and she's quoting my blood pressure. And I feel like I just jumped out of an airplane without a parachute, like I'm just falling through the air, and which is probably my blood pressure just crashing, right? And then I hear the nurse yell, 50 over 15, hurry. And it was shortly after that I knew that I was dying, right? So during the earthquake, when I gave birth, it was one of those moments when I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, we're all going to die in this earthquake, right? Mm-hmm. And that's, a lot of people have had those experiences. We've been close to a car accident or close to getting run over, and kind of have that feeling, this could be it. But this was very different because I had a complete awareness that I knew I was dying. And I was a complete atheist at the time. I had been raised in Northern Europe. I grew up in Sweden and moved to the States when I was 21. So I was raised Lutheran. Back in the day, everybody born in Sweden was a Lutheran because the state and the church were one. And so I had gone through the training of being a Lutheran, and I was confirmed when I was 14. But I really did not believe in anything, or that there was a spirit world or a God or anything. I thought, you die, it's black, you're gone, and that's it. I had no belief system in place for any kind of a spiritual aspect of life. So here I am lying on the table, and I know I'm dying at this point. So what do? I said, well, if there is something out there, this is my only hope left, because I know I'm dying. Mm-hmm. And I said, if there is a God out there, then, please let me live. I have 3 children under the age of 6, and they need a mother. And as soon as I said that, I got pulled out of my body. And so now I'm outside my body in the ER. My first thought is, how can I be outside my body and still be me? How does this work? This is not supposed to happen, right? Because I did not have a belief system in place for that. But there's also a knowing that when I'm in this place, there's just unconditional love and peace. But the thing that really threw me off was that was no time. And I knew that in this state, there was no time. Time sort of didn't matter. And you could have access to past, present, and future all at the same time. And I'm aware that I belong to that body down there on the table, right? It's like you drive to the grocery store and you step out of the car and you walk to the grocery store. You know that that's your car and you're going to go back to that car and drive it home. It was that kind of a feeling that, oh, that's my body. That's where my soul lives. That body belongs to me. So it's a very kind of matter of fact, right? And soon after this experience, I got pulled back into my body. And the next morning, while I'm in the hospital, I'm aware that my sister-in-law is in the left corner of the ceiling and I can hear her. And she says, everything is going to be okay. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to put my experience that I had the day before into place, right? And now I hear the spirit world at the same time. And I'm thinking, if I tell anyone, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to lock me up in the psych ward. You know, this is 1992. And I had no knowledge of anything called a near-death experience or, you know, soul survival or anything like that. So what happened next was I got really sick. I had something called a bone marrow suppression. And so I didn't have enough immune system, red blood cells, white blood cells, or platelets. So I would, you know, put my knee on the floor to tie my children's shoes. I would get a bruise on my knee. So during this time, as I'm struggling to heal, my life was, I was always in and out of my body. I was always holding on, kind of like holding on to my soul, like don't leave, and pulling it back in. And so I had a second near-death experience during this time. And I always joke that they saved me too quickly in the ER because I needed a second experience, because it's really the second experience that I'm going to tell you next that activated my life path. And it's really the work I'm doing today. So in the middle of the night, I wake up, my head is pounding because I don't have enough blood in my body. I take my head off the pillow. And this is just my life at this point. I've been doing this for 2 years now, trying to heal from this bone marrow suppression. As I'm lying in bed, again, the same thing happens. My soul just gets pulled out. This experience is very different because now it's like I'm just tumbling through darkness, almost like a spaceship, like Star Wars. You know, I think this feeling of just tumbling through space. And then I get to this place that I call the mid station because I had an awareness that there were like floors above me, so to speak, and floors below me. Go into a skyscraper that has 100 floors and you get off at the 50th floor. You know there are floors above you and you know there's floors below you, but you don't know what's on those floors. You get into the 50th floor and you know what's on that floor, right? So it's that kind of a feeling. But then I heard the most beautiful music that you cannot make on this planet Earth because I tried. We had this big Roland synthesizer at the time and I sat at that for a week. I tried, you know, over 200 sounds to try and see if I could recreate the sound I had heard, but there was nothing that was as beautiful as the music I heard. So I hear this amazingly beautiful music and I'm wondering, where's the music coming from? So I look and to the right, I see a little log cabin. So I'm thinking the music must be coming from there. So I open the door, I look inside, but it's empty. So then I look to the left, I see the mirror image of the log cabin on the right. And I open the door, I look inside, but it's empty. So then I become aware of this. The best way I can describe this is imagine you're standing on a football field or a soccer field and there is this heavy, heavy fog rolling in, but those big spotlights are shining on the fog. So there is this feeling of like a white fog light rolling in behind me that is completely, you know, submerging me in this light. The light is everywhere and I'm standing in this light. And as I'm turning around in this light, I see, you know, the outline of angels in the light. And the music is coming from the angels. But I'm also aware of the fact that I don't really believe in angels. I'm still trying to process my near-death experience from 2 years ago. Like, how does this work? How can there be this other dimension, right? So I'm aware that the music is coming from the angels. But I'm also aware that the light itself is what we come from. It is, and I don't care what you call it because I don't fit into any religion, but because I was raised Christian, I'm going to call it God. So it's God or source or what we come from. We're part of this light. And this light is just this pure, unconditional love. And we are that unconditional love. We carry that in us. We are part of that. And when we leave this earthly realm, we go back to that. We come from that and we return to that. And then I become aware of two spirit guides, and they're communicating with each other as if, you know, what is she doing here? This one spirit guide says to the other, what is she doing here? She can't be here. She has to go back. And I'm like, no, wait a second. How can I be outside my body and still be me? And this other spirit guide said, well, if I told you, you wouldn't remember. So there, and I've heard this from other people too, that there is some kind of a mechanism that they're in control of, that we get to remember or we don't get to remember, right? And then it's like I'm standing on the moon and I'm looking down on the earth. And around the earth, this is now 1994, I see this, well, now we would say it's the grid. But back then, we didn't have the internet, so there was no way for me to Google grid around the earth or net around the earth, right? And so I see this, what I called it the silvery, glittery fishnet, because I was raised in Sweden, in Northern Europe, and I rode this little rowboat for my grandmother as she laid fishnets in the ocean to catch fish for the family to eat. And when she lifted out those fishnets, the fishnets have like a diamond shape. Those little water droplets on the fishnet would sparkle in the morning sun. So I'm seeing this grid around the earth, and to me, it looks like a silvery, glittery fishnet, because that was my best comparison at the time. And the spirit guide says that everything on earth is connected to each other, and everything on earth is connected up to this grid. And with that information, I got sent back. But that is literally what has become my work today. So these near-death experiences, I have also been told, are in my astrological chart. I've also been told that I had more near-death experiences because that's what it looks like in my chart, but I just don't remember those. And that would also explain why, you know, some people have a heart attack and they're dead for 5 minutes and they don't remember anything. Well, they weren't supposed to remember. That's how I look at it.
But I have a question.
Yeah, it was for activating my life path.
Wow. So for those who have gone through something similar, because you've been through it multiple times, what are there practices, approaches that could help them regain, like from that experience, regain a sense of centeredness? Just because it sounds so profound. And I can imagine, you know, talking, you know, integrating it into your current life experience might be difficult. So I wonder if you could speak to that.
Yeah, if people had an experience like that, what they could do to sort of connect with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to say meditate, because when we meditate, that is really what opens up our intuitive channels. And it's just a matter of meditating every single day. Make it like a priority in your life to meditate. The more you meditate, the more you're going to hear the things that is beyond our physical body or our physical awareness. So it's all about quieting down or quieting the mind. And so when you quiet the mind, you have that ability to tune in, and you can hear the things that are beyond this room, this dimension, so to speak. It's like you're watching a movie and your neighbors are having a party. You can't hear the movie, so you keep turning up the volume, and eventually everybody goes home and you're thinking, finally it's quiet, right? And you turn the volume way back down because now you can hear it. It's the same thing with the mind. When you turn that volume down and you go into that meditative state, it's the same thing as turning down the volume on your television. It doesn't have to be loud anymore. And when you get that quiet and peace within yourself, that's when you can really tune in to what lies beyond.
That's so profound. For people who struggle with meditation or with quieting the mind, what practices, techniques can they use to help navigate that?
I say, so it's very difficult for some people because, you know, if it's quiet, it's that monkey mind. It goes 100 miles an hour. And that's a good thing, right? We need the mind to be awake. We need the mind to think about things, because if you're meditating and you're not noticing there is a fire in the kitchen, you wouldn't be alive, right? So that mind is always on guard. It's always tuning into everything around us to make sure that, we're safe and surviving. So when we have all those thoughts, it's just, okay, here's another thought. Okay, I'm still here. There's no fire in the kitchen. Oh, that's the grocery list. Okay, I'm putting that aside. And it's just recognize the thought and just say, oh, I hear your grocery list. I'll try and remember that. Go back into the meditation. And that's normal, right? Because we are creatures and we have to stay alive. So the mind you can't turn it off. You can't tell your mind, don't think, because your mind keeps you alive. So that's okay. It's just a matter of getting used to it. But there are things you can do. Is there a specific type of music that you like that makes you sort of disappear in the music? Or maybe some people do better with a guided meditation where they can just listen to somebody take them on a walk through the forest or something that calms them down. And then you have companies like HemiSync that put binaural beats into their music. So you're thinking you're just listening to this, wonderful music, but they embed these binaural beats. And that brings your different brainwave states down. So you're going into a deeper brainwave state very, very quickly. And I love using those binaural beat meditations or music, because if you have a lot of things going on in your life, then sometimes it can be hard to turn off that mind. But those binaural beats help you, get into that deeper state more quickly.
Yes. Speaking of HemiSync, I know that you actually have an ancestral healing track on there. And I wanted to switch gears a little bit and see if you might speak to your role as an ancestral healer. And I guess, what role does ancestral healing play in connecting with one's soul?
Yeah, so ancestral healing is fascinating. And it actually started studying ancestral healing is a form of counseling. And so I actually studied, going through med school, we all have counseling, but we're not trained as counselors, but we recognize all the main things and then know whether to send that patient along to somebody like yourself, right? But then I studied ancestral healing, and it's fascinating how I got into it, because I was actually doing mediumship readings, and I had several readings in a row. I had like 4 readings in a row, and the readings were almost identical.
Wow.
And the readings went like this. I have an older woman with me. This older woman feels like a grandmother. She's close to the family. And your grandmother had a very hard life, and she was physically abused by the grandfather, your grandfather. And she had a couple of children, and one of those children was your mom. And your mother married somebody that was also physically abusive, and that was your father. And you were physically abused by your father as well. Oh, do you understand this? And the client says, yes, I do. That's absolutely correct. And that pattern of, the grandfather was abusive to the grandmother, and the child. The child is an unresolved issue between the father and that child. And that repeats then. And so the mother then married somebody that was just like her father, who was also abusive. And then that pattern repeated with her own marriage. And then now it repeated again with the clients, right? And so the patterns have a way of coming down from our ancestors. And many times we relive the same experience as our ancestors had. But it's very difficult when you're struggling with something. And sometimes we don't know what it is, right? And I've worked, my clients are doctors and physicians, psychiatrists, counselors, moms, anybody, from anywhere around the world. And it's really fascinating when I work with people that are psychiatrists or counselors themselves. And then I point out that, this is a pattern, and this is your father was this way. And your issue actually stems from this relationship. And
Yes.
then, the counselor or the psychiatrist says, I can't believe I couldn't see that myself, right? I do this for a living every day with people. But I'm going to say there is something about when we're so roped in to our own experiences and our own emotions and our emotional relationship with these people that sometimes it's really hard to see. It's like you can't see the forest for the trees, right? You can't see the trees for the forest, because it's just you're just swept up in all of that. But it's really fascinating because we're all so entangled with our ancestors, and we actually have studies now that show how we actually inherit trauma on our DNA, right? So we have studies from the Holocaust survivors and then their offspring, their children, their grandchildren, and how the gene markers actually changed. But those gene markers, right, then we have the epigenetics. We got to turn them on or turn them off with our software, so to speak, right? Just because we have a gene doesn't mean we're going to get that. And a lot of people are familiar with, we have a gene, we have the BRCA gene, and it makes us more susceptible for different types of, cancers like breast cancer or ovarian cancer. But it doesn't mean you're going to get it just because you have the gene, right? So you need the epigenetics, the software to turn that on, and you have to have the perfect environment, perfect conditions, and everything to make that actually turn into a disease. But we know that the trauma that these Holocaust survivors experienced actually also flips different gene markers that we have now identified. And one of those is the FKBP5 gene, where they can see that the offspring now has shifted. And they've done some studies too. There is a great study that was published back in 2013 in Nature Neuroscience, epigenetic inheritance of odor fear conditioning. And they actually took mice and they exposed them to a cherry blossom smell. And that cherry blossom smell, whenever they smelled it, they would give them an electric shock. Then they took the sperm from that mice and artificially inseminated the female mice who had never smelled the cherry blossom or received an electric shock. That baby mice reacted to the cherry blossom smell. They were very jumpy around it. They were afraid of it. And that they had more receptors. That was called an M71 receptor. They had more receptors because their father's sperm had now adjusted to the electric shock and the smell. And their body said, watch out for that cherry blossom smell because you're going to get an electric shock. They changed the DNA via their epigenetics, passed it on to their offspring to make sure that their baby mice is not going to survive if they smell the cherry blossom smell. And that's the same kind of pattern we're seeing with humans as well. So it's fascinating how we inherit things on the DNA, but we also inherit things via, I'm going to say, quantum entanglement, because we are always connected. And we know that from physics now that quantum entanglement or quantum mechanics, we don't even need a signal to go between two things. But that's also how we are connected. We are connected through quantum entanglement and DNA. And then we also have our own lived experiences, what we experienced as children. And so it becomes this big soup of, we have to untangle that. But when people are struggling with something, it could be they're struggling with confidence. They keep missing getting the promotion at work. They keep attracting the wrong person in their relationship. They have a bad relationship with their kids and they have been completely cut off. There's no connection anymore between the parent and the child. And all these different different things that we struggle with in life, that often comes back to that it's an ancestral issue.
Wow. And I know we're running a little bit low on time, but I do want to get a sense of what you're working on right now. If you could speak to that, and if listeners are interested in connecting with you, where can they go to find you and learn more about your work?
Yeah. So I do a lot of different things. So I work as a medical medium or medical intuitive because I'm an evidential psychic medium, meaning I can connect with loved ones in the spirit world. So I do mediumship readings for people who want to connect with a loved one in the spirit world, or maybe somebody who was not so loved because he was abusive in some way, right? In the spirit world, they heal on the other side. So I do mediumship readings, I do ancestral healing, I do medical intuitive or medical medium readings to help people figure out what it is. Many people fall through the cracks and they've done a lot of tests and nothing comes back and they're not feeling well, right? And so then I step in and I do a, medical intuitive. So I work psychically, I tune in with my body, I feel things in my body, I work with my spirit guides as well. So sometimes I'll get a diagnosis before the person gets on the screen. I'll say, the next client is Susan. What's wrong with Susan? And the spirit world says, oh, she has blah, 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 right? And then the client comes on the screen and I'm like, do you have blah, blah, blah? And they're like, I don't even know what that is. And then I say, well, it goes along with these symptoms. So do you have these symptoms? And they go, yes. And nobody knows what's wrong. I'm like, yeah, that's it. So it's really interesting because my work is really a combination of my medical training and then my mediumship training. I trained as a medium in England at Arthur Findlay College, which is world-renowned college for psychic sciences. And so I work as a medium, I work as an ancestral healer, medical medium, like medical intuitive. And then I also do connecting with your spirit guides or messages from your spirit guides. And that's a really fun session because you get messages, you learn what is my path here in life, what am I here to do, and I sketch the spirit guide that I see in like 5 minutes.
That's so cool.
Of that. And that's
that's so awesome. Well, Dr. Lotte, thank you again for sharing your wisdom, your work with us. It's been such an enlightening conversation. We are grateful for the light that you bring into the world. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And to find me, just go to my website. It's Dr. Lotte, DRLOTTE.com. And you can schedule sessions there and also sign up for my newsletter because that's how you'll stay up to date on different upcoming events.
Perfect. Thank you. If you haven't heard it yet today, I appreciate you. The soul in me honors the soul in you. If you'd like to see more episodes like this, please subscribe or click here. And friends, if this spoke to you, leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you.